How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Agave and Cactus Talk. Today we're going to be talking about 20 ways to make or save money with the agave you farm. So one of the first ways, straight out, that I'll tell you how to make some money with your agave is to sell your leaves to barbecue spots. So any place that is making, barbecue meats or roasting meats underground, then they use a lot of different woods and different you could say leaves or different things like that, herbs, to influence what they're cooking. And a lot of people already are familiar with what flavors are imparted from agave leaves, because in Mexico that's a common thing, cooking with them. So here there's a lot of Mexican restaurant owners that you could reach out to and try to sell your leaves to, and I've had a lot of luck with that. I've sold about a truckload of leaves at harvest time, and instead of just letting them rot in the ground, I found a place to put them, right? So you can reach out to places that are trying to really put forth, like, we roast with mesquite and all these different woods. Those I found a lot more receptivity to this. The second way to make money with your agave is going to be to grind it up, ferment it, and sell it as animal silage. Why is this going to be really profitable? Sorry, I gotta pause once in a while because I'm walking the goats. So yeah, this second way of making money with your agave, basically selling fermented silage. So for instance, if you harvest a lot of the leaves and grind them up, you can directly give them to goats and cows and pigs and bunnies and all types of green eating animals. Yeah, in the case of my goats, I actually don't even need to grind up agave or cactus. I'll just feed it to them straight raw, and they love it. I can supplement on my goats 70% of their diet basically with agave and cactus, and it's extremely nutritious, super high in fiber. It's basically superfoods, both of them. But yeah, you could probably do that with lots of other animals as well, especially with the cacti. But in this case, we're talking about agave, and the agave silage is something that in a fermentable state can be kept stable and can be shipped all over, right? So if you can give silage at comparable rates to what people are buying grain and alfalfa and all that, then you can sell barrels of it, you can sell IBC totes of it, you can sell whole trucks full of it to people, and that could be the way that they raise their animals if it's price competitive, right? So silage could be another industry that really grows with the agave in California. So the third way is seems like an obvious one, right? Sell your pinas to distillers, or the base of the agave, right? The heart. And you can also create your own spirit from the pinas, right? You don't necessarily need to make the sale to another person. So here's the different thing, right? You could just sell your pinas to distillers straight out. You don't need a distillery. But obviously you're going to not be able to set your price. You're going to be taking a price, right? So whatever the distiller wants to pay you, if it's unsustainable, you may have to sell at a loss, which is in many cases what happens in Mexico, which is what I tell people all the time. The Mexican agave farmers aren't rich, and they're, if they're staying in business, they're lucky. But I would recommend, even if you're niche, try to create your own brand, or get your own spirit. If you do a co-op distillery, or you do joint distillery with a bunch of people, then you may be able to get an affordable price to get your brand in a distillery, and then you create your own spirit brand from your own pinas. That's going to be the vertically integrated model, which allows you to profit the most. So the fourth way is going to be to make and sell pulque. So this is going to be a tough one because not sure how this is going to pan out with cow OSHA and, you know, the safety popos, you know, and because my whole thing behind pulque is like, well, you can make it and you can sell it, but how do you test that it's something that's safe, right? So I think it's going to be something that you have to maybe have an on-site lab, or you have to have, especially if you're selling it to the public, legally anyways, right? You're going to have to maybe do some sampling every month or something to authorities to just ensure that your practices are good, in the sense that your pulque fermentation is, you know, something that's sanitary. Because we're definitely not going to be able to do what they do in Mexico and just use a lot of these backyard methods, I'll call them, of making pulque. But I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, you know. We're going to have to come up with our own kind of unique ways of making this stuff, you know, to satisfy both California authorities and then, you know, the public. But will somebody make it? Yeah. And will it be profitable? Probably, yeah. Because it's like I tell people, you know, you can harvest the pina once and make a spirit. You know, say you get a 100-pound pina, you make yourself a cool 8 bottles. Dope. That's one time you make the money, right? But with the pulque, you know, you could go a month, 2 months. Sorry, my alarm went off. But you could go 2 months every single day, you know, 1 to 3 times a day harvesting the aquamiel, and you could ferment that and distill even. So you could distill the aquamiel or the pulque, or you could just sell the pulque, right? Every single day. So do you want to make money off it once, or, you know, 60 times? So I think pulque is definitely going to be the more profitable way, and everybody's thinking about spirits right now, which is kind of just interesting to me. Which brings me to point number 5 of how to make money with your agave, which is going to be aquamiel distillates and pulque distillates. So once again, every day you could get aquamiel and distill it, or you could get aquamiel fermented for a little while, a few days or so, a week, and then you could get yourself some pulque that you could distill as well. And the aquamiel and pulque distillates are going to be a way less percentage. I've seen some of them, you know, in the 20s. You know, I like that because you're not getting super wasted off it. But you know, going back to that point 4 of making some pulque, that might be a way that you can kind of do some glamping or some ecotourism too, right? Because the best pulque is really on the farm. It can't really be shipped easily, so it's a way to attract people to get to your farm, experience it, maybe do some touring, and then it's something that they could drink fresh. The aquamiel, the pulque, you know. But yeah, point 5, the aquamiel distillates and pulque distillates, highly profitable in my opinion, compared to making just the spirits once. You know, these are things not a lot of people know about, the aquamiel and pulque distillates. They're, even in Mexico, a very niche thing. But, you know, if you want to know about aquamiel and pulque distillates, I would highly recommend to get in touch with, you know, the agave researcher from UC Davis, Yessie. She's got that going on in Mexico, like making those types of distillates, her and her family, and she also is very knowledgeable and willing to share information on that stuff. So if you're going up that, you know, barking up that tree and you're making that stuff, you know, it may be someone you can learn from here in California. So point number 6, you know, sell your agave to wine producers. So it's a niche market, definitely, but it's something that I believe is going to start gaining traction, because a lot of the wine is starting to get, you know, we took out probably 50,000 acres this year. I think we need to hit 100,000 before we can stabilize a little bit of the wine market and grape market in California and globally, to be honest. Everybody's kind of in the same position of overproduction, and nobody buying. The distributors have years of the distributors have years of supply, and if no one's buying, it's just really fucked for everyone right now in the wine scene. But agave wine, cactus wine, these are niche wines that can come out, and you can start, gaining that market because it's something that's brand new, right? So, what do you call it? I've made cactus wine, and I haven't made agave wine, but I'd love to, with some pinas, ferment them, much like a wine, and see, what pops out. I know that there's an agave wine on the market already. I think it's like agave de sol or something. Don't remember exactly, but, you could find it in LA now too. So agave wine is starting to get out there, and California has, 2 centuries of growing grapes and producing wine. And, my family's worked with Charles Krug, which is the oldest winery in Napa. And, there's a lot of infrastructure here that revolves around grapes and wine production in California, from SoCal to NorCal. And some of these old vineyards and new vineyards coming on the market with heavy capital may start to want to create agave or cactus wine. So try to look for some of those vineyards that are trying to differentiate themselves, and maybe sell your agave to them so that they can produce wine. Or you can produce the wine yourself and make even more money, going back to the whole vertically integrated model. And that's something that also you don't need as much equipment as spirit production. So it may be a simpler way to create a vertically integrated product that can become profitable for you. And I will say, the agave wines that I've tried, I particularly really like. So I think, and the same with cactus wines, if I'm being honest here. So I hope that more people start exploring that. Where I was going with this whole little spiel was that because California already has all the production, and it's taking out all these grapes, it has all these fields with really good water supplies, and if they dry farm agave, a lot of that water will stay in the aquifer, and they'll still be able to produce wine. If my calculations are correct, per acre they should be way more profitable producing agave wine than grape wine. So just based on tonnage. So it does take a little bit longer, but definitely the rewards are there. Yeah, the other thing in terms of wine is just Napa, Sonoma, all these big wine regions, they're pushing up against a lot of regulation, environmental destruction. So when you plant a monoculture of grapes, and you got all this runoff destroying the rivers and the lakes because of all your chemicals running off when it rains, and these places it rains a fuck ton, which is once again why I don't know why they don't choose grapes that you could dry farm, and plants like agave and cactus you could dry farm. But point being, they're starting to reach the point where people are getting mad at them. Now Gallo, one of the biggest producers of wine, they're coming after them because they're starting to allegedly hurt the groundwater. I'll say allegedly because that's the ongoing lawsuit. Who knows if the city's correct, or the politics behind that. But the point is, they're starting to be more watched. Before, it was just grow. Up until 2012, there was unlimited grape growth, basically. I mean, there was no turning back on the amount of grape acreage. So 2012 was pretty much the peak of grapes that we had planted, and we've kind of gone down every year since then. And that was the first instances of the California drought that started making everybody want to rip their lawns out and go drought tolerant and xeriscape and all that. And the farms as well started wanting to plant more drought tolerant. So grapes is the number one planted crop in California, but we lost hundreds of thousands of acres. I think around 200,000, if I remember correctly. I might be like 150 or something, but a lot of, if you imagine all the workers, all the owners, back in that day, automatic harvesters still weren't in the game, and automatic maintenance. Like, my little brother is running, some vineyards with I mean, a lot of bots. Like, you know, a lot of the Mexicans aren't really needed anymore. You can do pretty much everything that they did with robotics now. But back in 2012, that was not the case, right? So a lot of these things came out because of the need to be more profitable. Like I give an example today, grapes. Shit, if you're getting 500 an acre, 1,000 an acre, that would be something like you're happy with, because it's really bad, really bad. There was times, you know, 10 years ago where people were getting 5, 10,000 an acre. So the game has changed severely, and that also affects why, you know, we're rounduping the crap out of all of our vineyards and all this. And I know I'm going on a tangent, but I'm just trying to show you how involved California grapes is, right? Number one planted thing. And it's all going, most of it, to wine. And we can produce agave wine with none of that same water resources. We could just dry farm it and make a bunch of agave wine, and that'd be really highly profitable, I think, for the farmer, and for the vineyard producer, or for the winery, I mean. But yeah, it's something that I believe is going to come. Like I mentioned, a lot of the storage, the distribution, the networks, all of these things behind wine and grapes in California can easily shift to cactus and agave if they start producing wine with it. So, yeah, 0.6 agave wine. That's a big one. I think probably could use its own podcast, but just mention it here, right? So, point number 7, selling the agave stalks. I have used agave stalks here as stakes. I've used it as roofing. I've used it as different construction pieces. I mean, you know, I've cut them all up and seen the insides of lots of them, and they're very styrofoamy. So, I mean, people here in California and around the world, I think in 2 other places, are producing surfboards. So in Africa and California here, producing surfboards out this stuff because it's super buoyant. But I've thought about making packaging material with this stuff because it's biodegradable styrofoam, basically. You get me? It's like nature-made styrofoam better, because our shit is just destroying the ecosystem. But if you made it out of agave and you pressed it or something into the shape of utensils, plates, straws, any utensils like that that are used in the kitchen, it could be recyclable. The packaging, you know, you're shipping all these packages, all of the boxes, all of that could be agave, you know. It was used as paper, right? So it's a great fiber, many of them. I mean, the Aztec Codex was written on agave paper. It's basically, Mexico is like papyrus, right? Like how papyrus was super important to Egypt. Agave paper was our shit. That might be another thing, just a little side quest right now. Agave paper from the stalks, and the leaves probably a good one too. But yeah, the stalks, you know, you can sell it, grind it up too. If people need it already processed, that could be an added value. You could sell the stalks I mentioned as tree stakes, depending how tall they are. I think they're way more stronger than bamboo. I've used them to, you know, with giant T-post hammers, and the bamboos usually break sometimes in tough soils, and the agave stalks don't. They go really deep. So, really good stalks. My grandpa in Guatemala would have used agave stalks, some of the large agave americana subspecies that they have over there, and purpusorum, agave purpusorum, which is, I think, Gisberti, agave Gisberti. That's also native to Guatemala, and they use the stalks for roofing, as I mentioned, siding, flooring, even little bridges. You know, you can change the shape much like wood. So I've seen them, for instance, steamed, and just like a wood piece that you steam to kind of make like a curved radius for like a deck. You could do that with agave too, and make some cool like little bridges I've seen with them. It's kind of cool. But yeah, the agave stocks has a lot of potential there, I believe. I think, you know, there's billions of dollars in the packaging. I mean, I always tell people this shit. I'm like, the whole agave spirits industry is like 15 billion, maybe, no, not even. Mezcal's 1 and tequila like 10 or 11, maybe 12 now. So under 15 billion when you combine them all, even including Sotol, right? The packaging shit is like probably 10 times that, global packaging solutions. So in terms of like boxes and fucking the stuff that goes on the inside, right? And even grocery store packaging, right? Like I mentioned, this is a biodegradable option. So that's point 7, the stalks. Point number 8, sell agave plants. Preferably your pups, I put here. And you keep the seeds because your seeds are all going to be different genetics and your pups are going to be similar genetics to what you have. So you could play mix and match with that. If you want really, you see one that you plant and you want a whole bunch of them, then yeah, you keep the pups and plant them out. But if you're always seeding to make money and profit, right? Because you could turn, 1,000,000 agave seeds into 1,000,000 plants in 2-3 years and make yourself couple million, $10-15 million if you know what you're doing. And a million seed is just 10,000 times about what is that, 100? So about 100 agave stalks worth of seed can produce you $10-15 million worth of plants. Whether you're a dumbass to sell that is another thing. I always tell people, I'm like, everybody can produce fucking probably 100 million worth of agave plants. Whether you could sell 100 million agave plants is a whole other thing. Because people they're not good salesmen and they don't know how to sell. So, I sell a lot of other people's agaves too, right? And that's because sometimes they don't know how to move their own product, right? And I got the clients. So my point is find and link yourself with people like me or nurseries that you can move stuff into and they can sell it. If they're better salesmen, you maybe get a less of a price, but you move more product and you make more profit. So sometimes it's better to make a little bit less money, but you got it at scale. So the plants, you want to keep your California, USA natives, and you got the California, USA market, which is a giant market. There's probably, I estimate, around anywhere from 25 to 50 million agave being sold in the USA every year. And that market is just consistently growing. That's probably an underestimate. It's probably 100 mil. But a lot of that's going exported as well. So remember the global market. Big markets are Asia, Hong Kong, China, Japan, Thailand. Make sure you got your phytosanitary certificates if you're shipping internationally. Or they might get confiscated by other countries' customs. You know what I mean? And make sure you got your nursery license in the case that you're in a state that requires it or something. Just make sure you're following the rules is my point, because you don't want to be shipping 10,000 agave somewhere and they just get repossessed and you're out all your money. So keep it legit, But yeah, sell agave plants. I sell a lot of agave plants. That's probably the number one way I make money with agave, if I'm being transparent. But I sell all types of species, and I'm really selling them at the smaller side. So bulbs and which are like 4-inch plants, and then kind of like 1 gals. Why? Because I could provide, sometimes, for instance, I'll give you an example. Say you buy 1,000 agave angustifolia marginata from me, and then you compare that to buying 1,000 agave tequiliana or something, say from Jalisco or whatever, right? So I could probably sell that to you for like 1,500 or 2,000 maybe, depending, sometimes 2,500 depending on how big they are. Those bulbs, right? They might come with roots already. Now, those bulbs you could plant out about an acre, right? So if you get an acre of, pups from Jalisco, you might be paying, instead of $1.50 or $2 a plant, you might be paying, $10 to $15 a plant, and then sometimes, say it's even 7 or 8, but you're only getting maybe a little bit larger of a plant, right? And the thing is, tequiliana, espadín, those plants you could get for extremely cheap from Mexico at that price. They have to get chemically sprayed at the border so that they're not bringing anything in here. So you're kind of starting off on a bad foot already with a bunch of chemical agave, you know what I mean? But also, they have to chop all their roots off to come into the USA most of the time, cut them up, and they're just stunted once they're planted. Whereas when you grab something that's just been proliferating and you put it in the ground, it's just going to continue proliferating. And going off of the Angustifolia train, Angustifolia marginatus is cold tolerant in the majority of California, whereas Tichliana and Espadin is only going to be limited to a very small selection of California. Most of the farmers that have tried it are failing pretty hard with it, except in a few places. So I believe it's not going to be a very profitable thing for us, and everybody's buying it and planting it, and they're going to find that out the hard way, unfortunately. But you know, can't console everyone, man. But yeah, the point is, I sell plants a lot at the small scale because I'm trying to get farmers, you know, sometimes 10,000, 20,000 plants at an affordable price. That's not $1 million freaking dollars for them to go and plant out their fields, man. And then they'll go and put these pups in some trays, or they'll put them in some coco noir or some nice soil. A couple months, and within 3 to 6 months, they got plantable stuff, right? That's in a much larger state than anything, and healthier state than anything coming as an import. And as I mentioned, you can only really get 2 species from Mexico at an affordable rate, and even affordable, as I mentioned, is still going to be double or triple what a lot of the plants you can get from California. Because, you know, those, let's say the $10, $15 plants, right? So I got a lot of agave that I can sell at $15, and they're 5 gals. They're going to come with 2 feet of roots, or, around, 1 foot wide, 1 foot deep kind of roots, and they're going to be already super healthy when you plant it. They're not going to be shocked. They're going to just go straight into root development. Whereas I'm seeing a lot of the agave coming from Mexico, they're being stunted for around 6 months to a year because they've been trimmed, they've been chemically sprayed, they've had their roots chopped off. They're going through a lot of shock, being moved 4,000 miles away, 3,000 miles away to the United States, which is a huge problem. I think I've mentioned the carbon footprint behind that is probably extremely horrible. I mean, like, I just planted out a farm close by to here in Lancaster not too long ago, and it's crazy because, I mean, I grew the agave in Lancaster from seed. I gave it to him at $15, $20, depending, $25, some of the 5 gals, depending what species. And he's getting it cheaper than he buys it in the nursery. I'm selling it, in my city. I don't need to move it. The carbon footprint behind it was literally me moving it 15 miles from my greenhouses to his farm and planting it. Compare 15 miles to 3,000 miles on a semi-truck and being ran by diesel consistently, for whatever that trucker could drive 8 to 12 hours a day. I mean, that's an incredible amount of air pollution, probably soil and water pollution from that diesel, at the end of its life. And it's just like, look, at the end of the day, buying local is going to be cheaper. It's going to be better for the planet. And I've always mentioned these big farmers should be thinking about California, not Mexico. I mean, I'm Mexican. I love Mexico. But I want California farmers to plant California agave that's grown here from seed, and the seeds picked from our agaves that were grown up here or naturalized or in people's places already for decades or centuries. We shouldn't be importing like crazy 500,000 agaves of 2 types into the United States, which, by the way, they can't inspect everything. We've already brought in my opinion, every single plague that Mexican agave has, which is a huge problem. Because if we plant what they got, we're going to deal with the plagues they got. And even worse, we're going to create plagues, and as agave goes back in the other way, we're going to send them back to them. It's going to be a gnarly thing, because the whole plague thing is not only just Mexico or Brazil or Africa. It's not just this localized thing anymore. Now it's going to be this global thing, because agave is being shipped everywhere. And whether you agree with that or not, that means that the globe's pests and plagues are at the the doorstep of agave, whether we like it or not. So, yeah, point number 8, summary, sell agave plants, right? But let me just mention one quick point on that again. So the agave plants, once again, I want them coming from California because I want the California agave industry to boost the California agave nurseries that have focused for decades and centuries on this plant that nobody gave a fuck about until recently with the mezcal and tequila booms, right? So there's some cases where people have been growing this stuff, for so long and nobody really cared about it, right? So we need to be bringing up those people so they continue hybridizing agave, they continue seeding agave, all these rare agaves and all this cool stuff that we need. Like that's the whole point behind the buy local movement, right? It's like when you buy local, you keep the money here. Like that farmer that bought the agave with me, I'm spending the money in the Lancaster economy. The farm is growing in the Lancaster economy, Lancaster, California, right? So it all stays here, the money. Whereas when you go and buy 500,000 agave from another country, the money goes to them. You get me? We don't need that, to be honest with you, in California. So point number 9, harvest the quiote and collect all the seeds, bubils. So yeah, every quiote is going to probably give you in between a few thousand seeds, sometimes as low as 1,000 or 2,000, sometimes up to 40 and 50,000. It really depends on how big the agave stock and whether it's a bulbous agave which produces bubils or whether it's a heavy cedar. All that is a factor into the seed production of the quiotes. But I was talking about this yesterday with one of my friends. I'm just like, in the prickly pear, the most nutrient thing is the seeds, and people don't really like eating them. And it's what contains a lot of these, big oils and stuff that are going into skincare and stuff, and becoming a $100 million industry seems like overnight. Yeah, it's the seeds are the biggest shit in a lot of fruits and vegetables, like the most or the most nutritious per unit density, right? So even though they're very small, they're very nutritious. And this is something I've been thinking about. Why is no one talking about eating the fucking seeds? I'm gonna roast some agave seeds and eat them, and I'll report back to y'all. Because my dad the other day was just like, they kind of look like fucking squash seeds sometimes to me. And I'm like, yeah, man, I wonder if we fucking roast them, if they'd be tasty and crunchy, Because I love me some pumpkin seeds, some squash seeds, some, cucumber seeds. Like, there's all these different seeds that you can roast. Fucking bomb. Oh my god, they're fucking bomb. So agave seeds might be a viable market there too. Selling roasted agave seeds, selling fresh agave seed as a food. You can also sell the seed, right? Like I'll sell you 1,000 agave Villamoriana seed, sometimes 5-10 cents a seed. So you might be able to sell 1,000 seeds sometimes, depending on the rarity of the agave, for anywhere from 30 all the way up to even some of the most rare agave species, especially if you created them, it could be $1 or $2 a seed. So I mean, you $30 all the way up to 1,000, $2,000, depending on which agave species it is, right? So, but it's always a changing market. It's like that Thai Constellation bullshit that was like $5,000 a plant, and then everybody grows it, and now you can buy it in Home Depot for like $10 a plant, right? So these niche markets, you got to be always running up on them, always advancing on them, because it doesn't stay that way forever. You get me? I remember when you could sell an agave utensis for like $3,000. You know what I mean? Now, that's why they got poached to oblivion, and now they're like $100 each, and now they're being seeded and by hundreds of thousands, probably by a whole bunch of people, farmers, and they're not dirt cheap, but they're affordable now. You can go buy yourself a little 4-inch utensis for like $30. Before that was like a couple hundred. So that's something. Let's see, obviously seed, make your own plants and sell them. The bubils are big time. I love the bulbous agaves. Those are basically my favorite agaves. I have to move some goatees. Whew. One sec. Boy. got me running. So yeah, what I was saying is the bulbous agaves are like my favorite agaves. Agave Mariana sometimes could give 1,000, a couple, maybe even 3,000-4,000 bulbs. Agave Angustifolia marginata, which I've had bulb on me already a bunch of times. Sometimes, you know, up to 2,000 bulbs, 3,000 bulbs as well. Desmentiana bulbs on me, got in a couple hundred off of those. The Mangaves, of course, lots of bulbs, many of them. Trying to think, 4 quiotes, sisal. Just harvested a couple thousand sisal, been selling a bunch of that. If you need sisal, I'm the plug, but mine's a hybrid. So it looks exactly like sisal, but it looks a little bit different to the stuff I know in Mexico. So I'm calling it agave sisalana hybrid because I don't think it's OG, but you know how it goes. Let me see. Yeah, the genetics on agave is fucking insane. So you can sell the fresh quiotes at farmers markets. You know, you could cut them fresh when they're just a few feet. You could wait until they're super large and, you know, roast them and make them into kind of like cane, roasted canes. So like, you know, roasted cane sugar, like in Mexico and Jalisco, we'd be munching on it, making fresh juice out of it. You could probably juice them too when they're roasted, to do the same thing with the agave quiote. You know, sell them to chefs, you know, sell the quiotes fresh to chefs that are trying to experiment, you know, here in LA. That's why I love being in LA County, because it's like you're in the middle of fucking nowhere, you know, state. How the hell are you gonna try to sell your product, right? So I mean, all the agave spirits are coming to LA County. Anyways, you know, it's like it's gonna be easier to sell agave products here than probably any other place, than except maybe like Texas or something. You know, Texas and California really are going to be the two places where people already know this shit. They know how to eat it and consume it. But yeah, that might be a viable option. There's so many great restaurants in these big cities looking for new products that, you know, their clients will, you know, it's something niche that they haven't tried before, right? And they want to make these fancy dishes, I call them. Can make money with that too, right? Sell the quiotes to them. Sell the roasted sugary portion as a chewable product. So mill it, you know, once it's roasted and get the juice out, or you know, sell little pieces as like just sugar cane. But yeah, hold on. That on number 9, the quiote still. I wanted to mention the older quiotes, like say agave Americana, giant ones, you know, 30-40 footer ones. Those, yeah, you can sell as building products, right? So once again, I'm going back to the roofing stuff. Seen a lot of them use this roofing and siding in Mexico, so, and Guatemala. It's a real great viable option. Building material. It's a lot like bamboo, but just way stronger. Well, I'm sure there's lots of really strong bamboos, but a lot of the bamboo I've dealt with here in LA County seems to be pretty weak compared to the agave stalks I've dealt with here in the county. So, number 10. I'm going to try to split this podcast into 2. So this will be the last one for now. Let your animals forage the agave, you know. Try to let them trim it up. You know, get them in the fields to fertilize. You can use electric netting to prop up the agave leaves so they just munch just the tips of them, you know, a little bit, and try to boost your pup production. But then, you know, they're maintaining the leaves just a little bit, so you're not having to do as much work at the end, but you're leaving lots of leaves still for that agave so it can continue growing, right? So the electric netting, you put it up on the left and the right side if your animals aren't trained like mine at the beginning, and then you run them through the rows essentially, and they're going to eat up all your grasses. I try to move them before they eat all the native, so try to leave a 2 or 3 inch so it all grows back, and it has, you know, that 1 to 4, 5 foot sometimes of roots. Those grasses, they grow back quickly, don't worry. Get them in there. It's going to aerate, it's going to fertilize, it's going to open up that soil a little bit for more water percolation through that aeration and fertilization of the plants. And then when that fertilizer is in between the rows, then the agaves have access to it. So what was I going to mention about that increased pup production? That's a theory of mine. It's been happening with my agave, but just because the causation doesn't mean correlation. It might not happen to you. But whatever it is occurring on mine by running the goats through the agave fields and getting way more production. So, you're also going to spend less money on the feed, obviously, if you do that, because you're going to be feeding them the natives, a little bit of agave, whatever ground covers you have, like cactus or trees, a little bit, branches sticking out, they're going to eat them, which is great because it keeps it all nice and tidy. The increased stress on the agaves is going to cause potentially some mutations, some variegation, some, either on the color, the spines, the leaves. You're going to start seeing some funkiness, man. So once again, why you want to have stress on the agave? In many cases, stress is not good for the plant. In this case, the agave, you do want, well, put it this way, stress is never good for the plant, right? But in the case of the agave, the crop that we want, when it's stressed, produces a better sugar profile in terms of biodiversity and density, and it also produces better flavors, in pretty much everyone's opinion, I'd say. So yeah, that's gonna, if you're a rancher like me, it's gonna basically lower your water and feed intake for your animals. The feed, it could be on some days 70%, if you're doing it for a longer portion of time, like a month or something, you could try to do a 40 or 50%, and then that's gonna lower, like 2/3. So if you feed, like, say, 60% cactus in agave, you're going to drop your water consumption on your animals about 40%, right? Sometimes a little bit higher depending on how wet they are, right? Like if it just rained and they soaked up all that water, they're going to have more water, right? And those cactus or those agaves, obviously are going to be growing much better because now you're more profitably, because you're not having to go in there and mow up the rows, weed whack, spend money on labor, spend money on mowing or crimping or whatever the fuck, diesel for those machines that you're going to heavy compact all your soil and just fuck it up anyways. The goats are going to go in there and improve it all, you get me? And make sure to keep your natives, make sure to keep your ground covers, so that the soil is covered, the soil is not evaporating all that water out and keeping the water in the ground when it falls. Yeah, farming and ranching was never supposed to be separate, and now they're separate, and the ranchers suck and the farmers suck. They both fuck up the ecosystem, people, and they're not really making much money except at the real top. That's why the thing in farming, the saying is, get big or get out. And that's stupid, because it's like those giant corporations are making $500 an acre. It's a fucking joke. They got $1 million equipments to do that. And then, yeah, you can say, oh, they're very efficient in doing that. Very efficient in destroying our topsoil for the next generations and the rest of the world. And at fucking us and creating dust bowls everywhere. That's I'll give you that for efficiency. But at the end of the day, you got little quarter-acre fucking farms in Pasadena, California that you can see on YouTube, and man, they're making fucking $100,000. You scale that up to an acre, I mean, there's $250,000, $500,000 being made on an acre. So you want to be the big guy making these giant farms and working. You barely sleep, and you got 1,000 employees that are basically fucking wannabe slaves on little visas and shit from Mexico. Go about that, but that's not how I'm gonna farm. I'm gonna be a niche farmer, and I recommend to you to be a niche farmer, because that's how you can not go big or get out. And most of the time, those big go big or get out people, they're bankrupted 1 or 2 decades down the line, because they make one wrong move and their little 2% margin, even though it was a giant margin making them hundreds of millions, goes away and they go to shit. And you're seeing lots of that during the whole pan whatever you can get it, the pandemic, the Ukraine-Russia war, all these things affecting fertilizers, affecting agriculture, the tariff things now, all these things, they're, people are waking up, boom, taken out of business. So it's like you want to be adaptable. You want to have hundreds of crops, not one. Here I grow agave, cactus, pine trees, mulberries, dates, jelly palms. I got dozens of species of agave and cactus. I mean, bees, goats, bunnies, geese, fucking quail, chickens. You know, diversify yourself, man. But anyways, when you got the animals plus the farming together on one system, they really work off each other and complement each other and make both profitable. And sometimes without the other, neither is really profitable. So a lot of the times in my consulting work, it's a lot of that, bringing back animals to where they should be on the farm, and bringing back farmers to where they should be, into animal grazing and ranching. So that's one of the many things I love doing. But anyways, yeah, that's the first 10 part, and I'll put 11 through 20 maybe if I get a chance tomorrow walking the goats. But that's why I wanted to separate it in two, because I know I'd be talking forever. This shit's already 45 minutes and I only went through 10 points. It took me 5 minutes, maybe like 2 minutes to write it all down, but then you just talk about it quickly. So or time goes by quickly when you're talking about it. It's a better way to say it, I guess. But yeah, I hope you learned something today, and you got a little bit more knowledge of how you can start to look to sell your agave, how you're going to want to try to profit off of your agave farm. Don't go through all the mistakes that me and others have. Learn from us and hit the ground running. You know, you're not going to be going through a decade of failure, unless you're like me, you just love experimenting, right? But if you want to choose something, you definitely can learn about all these different things and choose something that works for you, that you'll love to do and is profitable for you. You know what I mean? Go for it. The money's out there. You just gotta be creative. Everybody trying to make spirits, you know, this bullshit AB or Assembly bill, I forgot the name of it already. The California agave bill. It's like, fuck that shit. Or AB 2606. Fuck that bill. You know, limiting the spirits or the agave to spirits. It's a fucking joke. This shit's crazier than hemp. It's like got 1,000 uses, man. It's across from California to Florida down to Peru native. Like, it's been probably 1,000 cultures have utilized it. Like, fuck out of here with that shit, man. Like, you know, a bunch of old white dudes trying to tell us indigenous people how to use a plant that we introduced them to. Fuck out of here. But anyways, we shouldn't limit ourselves to this when there's 1,000 ways to utilize it. So go out and find your fucking way. And I'll catch you on the next one. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Peace.